Tonight we're going to have a double header. First, the easy part. Just my opinion. I think the time has come that I'm going to go ahead and point out fairly simply a certain phenomenon that much of what I've been talking about, especially for the last 8 or 10 months, is based upon. And almost everything that ordinary people ever believe they're contemplating having to do with the nature of life, that this is the basis of almost all of that. In the 3D world, literally, physically, mathematically, in the 3D world, in a 3D universe, it requires binary alternatives for any growth. Now, if we're talking about a 4D world, it would be otherwise. A 5D world would be something else. 4D world, in fact, I've talked about, it requires something else. That is, if you got good enough to operate, to understand what was going on in the 3D world, the city, then that would no longer be appropriate. It would no longer be adequate for what you would understand then. It would no longer fuel you. If we use such terms as, let's use the old Buddhist term, if you became enlightened, that is, you understood the city, the 3D world, on some sort of permanent basis, you would then be faced with a new situation of being almost running on empty, because what you understood then would not fuel what you would need to understand about what was going on in the 4D world. Just a bit of encouragement. At the 3D level, there is a continual binary split of alternatives. And it operates in such a way that's pretty simple, but with an individual, just one packet of genes put together that seems to be you. It's almost at every second, it's like this little split. And the split is this continual binary split of alternatives. Only two. That's all is necessary in the 3D world to sustain growth. It splits into two lines, and at any given time it appears to be a line of growth and non-growth. Now, at any given moment, I say, it appears that way. But look how many moments you're going to have to live before you die. A whole lot of moments. I don't have to figure them up. And every single moment does not seem to be that sort of very distinct demand of you making a choice. But at the very least, it seems to be this, that if there is a sensation of a choice, should I have another sip of coffee? Am I out? Should I have another one? You're sitting at home doing this. Should I have another piece of cake? Now, it may appear to be fairly irrelevant to you, but here is what the nervous system does not understand. Part of what I've been trying to tell you over the last few years. It may seem to be fairly irrelevant with you. Let's say that weight's not a big problem of yours, putting on weight. And now you sit and you've already had X number of pieces of that cake, and there's another one left, and now you sit and you don't know. Nobody plans this. There you sit and you turn the page of a magazine and you almost start to move to get the cake. And then you might sit back and you think, well, I've had 5 pieces, etc. It may not appear to be that important to you, except here is what you fail to notice. It has some significance, or you would not feel the choice. So I start off and I'm giving you the general heading verbally. Is this split is going on continually into two lines, and one, generally, I am labeling for you correctly, is growth, and the other one is non-growth. Now, at the very least, the situation I just said, if it does not appear to be that strong, that clear division between actual growth and non-growth, it is this, at the very least, that you can feel. You can surely understand when I say it, that one of the alternatives appears to be more conducive to growth, and the other one less. In the case of you, you don't have a problem with your weight, and there's a piece of cake. but you felt the split of binary alternatives, either have the cake or not have the cake, which in the 3D world is your only choice. Once you thought about it, that's it. You got no other choice. I don't have to play this game of, hey, let's stop and think about it. You ain't got to think about it. There's only those two choices. So if you were moved, if your nervous system was run in such a way that you felt there was any question, should I, shouldn't I, even if it appears to be fairly irrelevant, at least one of them seems to you to be more conducive to growth. In this case, more conducive to health. For whatever reason. You just may imagine, I'm eating too much sugar. Maybe you keep reading enough magazines that keep saying most Americans eat too much processed sugar. Forget whether it's true or not. Nothing's true or not. It may seem to you that it is more conducive not to. It may make you feel better that, well, yeah, I've had 5, but I'm not a complete pushover for pastry. I'll exercise my will since I'm almost full, and all right, I won't have the other one right now. So to you, that seems more conducive to growth. It makes you feel better. You feel as though you have done something. Every sensation, every sense of morality that has ever been on this planet is based upon that. Every sensation of good and evil, right and wrong, moral, immoral, sex, overeating, greed. If you could see it, and some of you should be close enough, I've talked about it in so many directions, that I say in every moment of your life, then you've got to try and perceive the greater moments in life, and operating at an absolutely almost unimaginable speed and tempo. But whatever it is doing, the general pattern is to pursue any given line that is going to make it grow. In the same way that internally in you can sustain, without any doubt, a myriad of steps going along the line that appears to be non-growth. Every time you had a sip of alcohol, every time you smoke a cigarette, every time you get mad. And I'm talking about people attempting to do this. Well, there's some validity out in the city, but I'm especially talking to you. Anytime you do something that is not conducive to your individual growth, and by now you either know what that is or you don't. And you don't need me to tell you. You don't need a church. You don't need a rabbi. In fact, if you do need it, you'll never understand it. That you are pursuing, should be pursuing, the line at any given time that is more conducive to growth. It doesn't take any debate. It doesn't take some external standard. As I said, if it does, you're in the wrong place. But then life itself can abide millions of people, millions of these individual cellular units in it, called humans. It can abide millions of them right now taking dope, snorting, smoking, drinking, beating each other up, killing each other. It can tolerate it. But notice, it is not the majority. The majority of people do not kill each other. The majority of people do not, quote, waste their lives through alcohol abuse or drug abuse. The majority of people are middle class. The majority of people are square, right down the center, and they stumble through some 62 years of life, and they serve a purpose. In the same way, you tolerate internally. Look at all the number of times that you have taken in controlled substances in your body. Didn't kill you. You ended up here. You survived it, and even now, you don't have to be taking dope or alcohol. You just ate too much. Or just your general physiological makeup can be such that you have never been in that great of health to begin with. And so, continually inside of you, we could take smaller units and say, as this constant binary split of alternatives takes place, if some of your units, perhaps your stomach, maybe you've got a history of ulcers, that you've got parts of your internal units that continue to make these little steps to the non-growth side, and yet you still survive. You may have had to have surgery. You might have had part of your liver cut out, and yet you survive it because the overall schematic, the overall scheme is to move in the line of growth, to move in the line at the very least of that kind of behavior that is more conducive to growth. That is the beginning and the end of all morality. That is the heartbeat of all religion. It is, of course, I say of course you should see it, the basis of all civilized law. Now men in the city see it another way. It's described as we must abide by certain laws, and if not certain laws, certain codes of behavior to be civilized, so as to protect our property and our goods, and not kill each other, and not let the animal instincts in us drag us back down to the primordial level of beast. They can say that. They can say, and take it a little further out of government, just move it right over into the other form of government, that unarmed government called religion, and they say, well, it's on the basis that we've got to do what the gods want us to. They don't know it, but they're telling the truth too. The force of life, the force itself, is moving toward growth the same way you are. And therefore anything that is not conducive to growth ends up falling into some category of being immoral, uncivilized, and then when it gets real strong, illegal. And men take credit for it, at least on the governmental side. They say, in our wisdom, we have decided that we cannot tolerate blankety-blank behavior because it will tear up the very fabric of civilization. And so they say it's illegal. A little further on the other side of the spectrum, the religions apparently say, all right, we can't do certain things, even if it's not illegal. There are certain things that we can't do as good blanks, Christians, Jews, Muslims, because the gods told us not to. But notice, every one of them, you should be able to see this, every one of them, there's nothing to laugh at any religion in the world. Not if you see it correctly. That everything that every religion forbids is something that if it were done on a wholesale level would be detrimental to the growth of life. It is obviously detrimental, or you should see this, to the individuals involved. A sip of alcohol is not going to kill you. A six-pack is not going to kill you. A six-pack once a week probably won't kill you. Some people, I say probably, people drink a six-pack a night and it doesn't kill them. But if that were the norm, can you imagine life growing in the majority of the world's population made up by the kinds of people that drink a six-pack a night? Therefore, it's immoral. In the religions, normally the course is simply don't drink. You get into sex. In most religions, it's simply very strict. Humanity believes, certain humans, that the gods ordained marriage. And then there are the more humanistic thinkers that would say that humanity has done it themselves to sanction a kind of cohesiveness to the upbringing of children. And all of it's true. All of it's flawed. All of it is severely lacking. It doesn't tell a revolutionist enough. But it all has to do with the fact that if people behaved otherwise, if the behavior was otherwise on a wholesale level, they'd be pursuing the non-growth split. And so rather than deal on some basis individual, like, all right, some people could engage in this kind of funny sexual behavior that is outside just normal missionary fucking, to have children. Some people could. Maybe you could. We'll have to talk to you and do questionnaires and watch you. And maybe, but no, you can't. We can see you. So rather than that, life doesn't have time for that. But people in the city would say, well, humanity doesn't have time for that. And they're both right. They simply say, all right, no fucking outside marriage. That's it. Just don't fool with us. But religions, by and large, still have tried to hold right up. It's breaking down somewhat in the civil law. But all of this behavior that may sound strange to you personally at times, that may have sounded arcane, or that you may have thought that I gave some kind of goose to or some kind of kick to, it is life in general pushing man in this binary split of alternatives that is continually taking place over and over, and then bisecting one person with another, and then into the fourth dimension. That is the constant of time, the backdrop of all this. And it comes out as morality, and all it is speaking to, all it is addressing, is behavior that does not fall into the line, the split, that is most conducive to growth. That is the beginning of it. That is the end of it. That's the opening of the door of religion. That's the opening of the door of civilization to a revolutionist. You need to see it in this sense, that you are being, you and everyone else, have been continually forced into this apparent, constant, sometimes moment by moment, feeling that you are confronting very important, or nagging. You may try to describe, justify them away at some time, or laugh them away if you're drunk. But at times it seems like a plague, a non-ending plague of confrontational alternatives, that you've got to make decisions all the time. Now, to a revolutionist, you've got to see that the whole thing has been, it is not properly perceived. Now, in a city, that's irrelevant to say it's not properly perceived. What I'm telling you is, it has not been seen in the manner in which it can be seen. That anything that you ever believed, I don't care what background you grew up in, I don't care what was religious, non-religious, none of that's important. But as you are, just at the line level consciousness, everything that you feel as a decision to be made, should I continue drinking caffeinated coffee? Should I get more exercise? Should I call my mother more? Should I not have these strange sexual daydreams? It doesn't matter what it is. If you feel that there is a choice to be made, you're in it. There is no alternative except that choice is going to be made, but here's what you've got to see. It has never been correctly perceived. You either took it as being, well, it's religious and I don't like it. It's religious and I picked it up environmentally from my family and I don't like it, I reject my religion. Or you could believe, the God's put it in us, like this idea of conscience. You could believe that you are being driven by unconscious motivations. You've got to see that none of that's true. That the feeling, there is no way out, there is no exception to this. I'm just telling you straight. I've talked in a serpentine manner now for months about this. But that is it. You've got to see that all of these feelings, whether they seem to be sexual, health-wise, mental health-wise, whatever it is that you feel that, all right, I got two possibilities here. Should I or shouldn't I? That is what it is. Once you have a full grasp of that, then this whole feeling that I am wired up to be confronted with these nagging, plaguing decisions is gone. Because you see it for what it is. It's not moral. It's not a payoff in some afterlife. It is not unconscious motivations that you picked up that may or may not have any validity. It has all the validity in the world. But to be improperly perceived renders it useless. It's irrelevant, the way in which it is described in the city. Since it is not properly perceived, that is why it must be what? Improperly perceived. And that is why it must be thought of as being, all right, this is what God, some force outside this system, put us all here and says, all right, let's see how you guys do. And now we have to keep trying to guess, all right, what does he want us to do? What does he want us to do? There's no choice about what he wants you to do, if there was a he. What he wants to do is grow. What do you want to do? Grow. If any of you say otherwise, suicide's always a fine alternative, but go join another club. I don't consider that a fit hobby for people I know. So what do you want to do? I want to grow. You got your choice. Even in the city, they know this. In the 3D world, they know it in business. They know it in intellectual health, vibrancy, but they know it all the way from General Motors down to the nursery of trying to stimulate a child. That is, you're either moving ahead, you're growing, or you're going backwards. The businesses, for instance, to get just as hard-nosed as it may sound, as materialistic, businesses in the city only got two choices. They are either growing or they're deteriorating. A business does not stand still. It almost sounds impossible. Some of you, I'm not going to stop here, you already know that that's true. You could take statistics some way and pick out some business and say, all right, there for 2 quarters, for a year, it kind of stayed still. But it didn't. Even statistically, even if some way it could be proven that three-dimensionally, this business, General Motors, a fruit stand down the street, the business stayed the same. It didn't stay the same. Even if that appeared to be true, it's dying. Now, all of you should know that. That is even known in the city. I mean, they don't carry it any further. They might, somebody here and there might go, hey, that's almost a metaphor for life. No, it isn't. That is life. Remember. It is the same with you. Now, in the 3D world, I said it only takes this continual binary split of alternatives, binary alternatives. But now if you get better, it's when you've got to drag in the third alternative, my E. We're talking about now C and D. The E would appear to be those areas in a person's life at any particular moment. As I said when I started it, there's some moments when apparently there you stand and there's no choice, no nothing. It's almost like time out. It's almost like you're turning the dial from one station to another. But then, most civilized, most people with a nervous system that's good and active up here, you can only stand a few minutes of that, and you just say, then it's this. What should I do? I should be doing something. So there you are with that. The thing that I should be doing something. I shouldn't just be sitting around doing nothing. So what could I do? What should I do? It is the genetic code of life and yours. Faced with this, and it is attempting to grow in general. The only sense of morality, I shouldn't even say that if I already started the sentence, because it's not even morality in the city sense, but the only sense of morality is of you doing that which pursues the non-growth line. You're not doing evil in some moralistic or religious sense, but you can't continually do that and grow. Especially in this. Now you'll grow enough to live out 62 years without me. You'd have done that. I didn't save your life. You'd have gone ahead and lived out your time. And if I disappear tomorrow, you'll still live out your time. And so in a sense, you're going to grow. You'll grow and serve life's purpose as much as everyone else in the city does. But to do this thing, to do this singular thing, to grow off on your own for no good reason, for no particular reason to do that, you cannot continue to pursue the non-growth line. And then very shortly, you've got to understand that there is the third line. At times, apparently, nothing is going on. Everything's possible. That's when you've got direct access to the E-pool, to that which seems to be relevant. So, what should I do? What should I do? Because that seems to be the question. Another little piece about this, since this is such an overall feeling that people are shadowed by, that the nervous system vibrates with and against, the feeling that things are indeed deteriorating. Can you see that this is not an unnatural, unpredictable feeling in everyone that things are deteriorating on this basis? I've never described to you this way, but on this basis, that at every given moment, at any given moment, that this is going on in you, in everybody, and then overlapping, intersecting, conflicting with one another. But at any time this is going on, to pursue this line requires effort of some kind. And this one does not. Do you see that it is natural to feel that things are deteriorating? At the very least, do you want me to rephrase it? It is very natural for anyone to feel things are probably going to deteriorate. Things could deteriorate, and they don't know why, other than, and I'm telling you now, is, all right, for them not to deteriorate. For everything, just not to go to hell, requires that moment by moment, somebody, a whole lot of somebodies, are making effort. Because this one requires no effort, and what's the inclination? That's the easy part. You people getting this on tape, I'm sending a message that you better look at this. I'm going to leave it to you about who you want to see this. I don't think you should let people that just walked in off the street or that's seen one or two tapes, I don't think you should let them see this. But if you got some others who have been there 6 times, 10 times, I'll leave it to you. Okay? So you can turn off the tape now and consider that the end of the public meeting for tonight. back rolling. I could divide up all of you people. I could do it with humanity, but I could divide all you people into this. The intelligentsia, the merchants, the artists, and the workers. And this is a valid categorization of city people. People that apparently are the intelligentsia, the sciences, and I'll go ahead and lump in the professions tonight. And then those that seem to be the artists of life. And then those that seem to be the business people. And then everybody else. Bricklayers, carpenters, the workers. And within that realm does not mean that they're not people that do not exercise some degree of talent, perhaps, that do exercise originality in doing some sort of carpentry work or cabinetry work. But I'm saying in general people that fall outside that other category. It is the majority of people in the world that work, that they're not part of the intelligentsia. That didn't have anything to do necessarily with their intelligence, but they're not part of the intellectual institutions, and they're not working artists, and they're not merchants, they're not entrepreneurs, they're not businessmen themselves. They simply work for a salary, whatever it is they do. And oh yeah, how could I have forgotten that? There's another class here. They're out in life too, but this is really, as you'll see shortly, aimed at you people tonight. It's not in general. But I just want to admit to you that I'm aware that it's true out there in life. There's this other class that no matter what I do throughout the years, when I first started this, and I did it all on my own, a little advertising, the casting out a little bait here and there, up until this year of having you people here in Atlanta put on the paradigms. And now we've got a small collection of you people that's added down here in Atlanta. No matter what precautions I have attempted to take, and I've attempted to take some, no matter what I attempt to take precautions, we end up with a sizable number of this, let's call them a subclass, subdivision. They're like cloud chasers, fog fairies, dream merchants. They are like puzzles that have been at least slightly damaged in transit, that somebody along the way, apparently, in spite of what it said on the carton, do not stack over 10 high, they did. Where this end up, somebody just dumped it over. And I end up with some of these people, and they're like a puzzle, but they're slightly damaged. Or if you look at it as a jigsaw puzzle, there's a piece, if not missing, it's been mashed in such a way that I'm not sure it'll ever fit back in. They're definitely not sure at all it'll ever fit back in. They're not even sure it's their piece, and it's there in the box with them. We got this crowd. Throughout history, you would think, even though I refuse to name this anything thus far, and I can stand up here and use profanity and do things that may seem to be non-mystical or religious. That crowd, those of you that still got a dose of that, and I'm not picking on you full blast yet, so don't get excited, here or out of town. There's really no precautions to take, the way in which I've done it this far, to keep you people away. I mean, I'd be a fool to think that. I've been fool enough to kind of hope that maybe we won't get so many this time, and we always do. Some of you I apparently cure. Some of you apparently get better from being around here. Some of you now that have proven to be almost inseparable from this. Some of you, if you can recall, just a few years ago, you were nuts. And in a particular way, I mean nuts. It's not an attack on you. You can go back in the city and be wherever you wanted to be. Go back to being what you were. But some of you I met, and first off, you were immediately telling me such things as, I've been waiting on you. And you begin to infer that you'd been seeing me in dreams, that you just knew I came from a flying saucer. But you could tell that I was trying to have to put on some kind of front here for the benefit of the rest of the people. But you wanted me to know that you knew. Some of you got over that. A few of you. Some of you. But some of you are still nuts, here and in other cities. And so that you don't take nuts as just being a backhanded attack on you or a dismissal. Because there's nothing wrong with being nuts, not in the city. But I do mean something specific by it. And I don't mean that you're nuts because I say you're nuts. And I don't mean that you're crazy because I say, well, you don't think like I do, which would be pretty easy to say. But to be nuts is you believe that your wiring is definitive. To be nuts, in the sense I mean it with you people now, not in the city, but with you people, is you have taken and seem to have been affected directly by a lot of what I have offered you, and yet you have pockets. You have at least an area, or maybe more, that you're convinced either I don't know what I'm doing because I won't talk about it, or if you ever mention it to me, I dismiss it and say you're crazy, or you believe that I'm hiding something. Even if I tell you directly, forget all that kind of shit. That's another sensation of being nuts here. Another one is that you will take passing phenomenon, that is things completely out of your control, dreams, nightmares, delusions, which they wouldn't be in that if they were under your control. But since they're not, that's why I'm going ahead and call them that, and you take them as being some form, some stable statement of reality. To believe in trolls and fairies and ghosties and guides and gremlins and devils. When I say believe in, I'm talking about operational, that it still has an effect on you, that you think, again, that either I don't know what I'm doing because I won't deal with it, or I'm hiding something, or it's just some area that I just don't know anything about, and that you're just convinced that your relationship to it, your perception of it, your feel of it, is some stable statement, not just reality, but even super reality. And when it gets down to this, what this really is, there is no place for that. None, none, none. The city's got all the room in the world. They just got all the room in the world. The books fell. You might could write a book. But at any rate, there's no problem. But when it gets down to the level I'm going to threatening to point to tonight, there's no place for that. Now I've let some of you just coast along with this, and you're nuts as far as this is concerned. There is a complexity about some of you that you still take as being almost a definitive feel on your part of how extraordinary you are. And that many of you take what appears, or what should appear, to be a pretty straightforward, shallow, right in your fucking face approach that I use, is probably being an act. That internally, somewhere in my secret soul of souls, I have a boiling cauldron of intrigues and spookies and ghosties and weird, probably weird stuff that would make you look childish. Another little thing about crazy, I've been holding off for a while, but let me tell you another definition of crazy. This crazy in relationship to an all-out, kind of almost mindless, almost all-pervasive pursuit of the line of growth in you, regardless of what's going on in life, regardless of what's going on in your lovers, your family, or anybody else. All right. The crazy I mean in relationship to that kind of life would be this kind of crazy. It's where you ask yourself, that is your own nervous system, since all of you should know by now that you do have that ability. You just never noticed it until I pointed out that you can apparently talk to yourself. Not in the sense to have you put away, but you've been talking to yourself. There's been a partnership. But crazy is this, another definition. It's to ask yourself, hey, what do you think of so-and-so? And it lies to you. Did you hear me? You ask you. You ask you. Not everybody else, you ask you. In the privacy of your own head, you ask, hey, what do you think of so-and-so? And it answers you, and it lies to you. That is serious crazy. That's serious crazy. And it's nothing I can do anything about. In the city, it doesn't mean squat. You might get elected president or pope for all I know. But here, this is serious crazy. Not to notice it. Tonight, let me give you my final description of crazy. It's not crazy funny. It's not crazy critical and sarcastic. If there was any sadness to this, I could say it's kind of regretful craziness that some of you are not going to be able to go around the bend with me with this. But this other kind of crazy is in being. You're wired up, but some of you can't see it. And some of you, I've even made you turn and get a look at it, and then you refuse to see it. Well, I saw you see it, but then you refuse to see it. And that is that you remain uselessly complex and devious when all you need is just to be straightforward. Some of you absolutely can't help it. Some of you have gotten a little bit better. As I said, some of you I took from the realm, or your involvement here, took you from the realm of just being absolutely nutso to by now you'd be probably the president of the, at least the southeastern or the northeastern chapter of the UFO believers in Elvis or something. So you could have been somebody by now. You could have been a contender back in the city if you hadn't got tired from me. You could have been a contender for the heavyweight or the middleweight champion of extreme nuttiness. This kind of complexity, let me go back to my divisions. The intelligentsia, people apparently running from up in the upper areas of the nervous system. And then the artists. Then the merchants. Those of you that, none of this is good or bad yet. We're all born into that somewhere. Those of you that your main interest seems to be the drive for some kind of success, money, at least a bank account, some way to keep track of it, to get stuff. Apparently the plans, apparently you're interested in the highway itself. And then the workers. We'll forget the sky pilots for a while. Then just people who work. Just plumbers, electricians, whether you're doing it full-time or whatever. If you're not one of the other groups, that's what you are, at least right now. And most of you were born fairly well into one of those categories, in case you hadn't noticed. In those first three categories, intelligentsia, the artists, and the business people, there is built in, at the city level, a kind of induced, necessary complexity that is useless here. At the very least, it becomes useless. I can't stop it immediately any more than I could have grabbed you if you'd walked in and I said, in my mystical way, I can tell you that somewhere down the road, you belong here. There's no doubt about it, but my God, we got to do something about your ears. You've got the ugliest ears I've ever seen. I can't do anything about that. I could not do anything in the beginning about this kind of useless complexity. There comes a time that something must be done. And what I'm getting around to telling you tonight, that time is about upon us. We have extraordinary people in here, from a certain view, as you should know, here and in the other cities right now, September 1988. We've got people in here that are absolutely born into well-qualified, no doubt about, intelligentsia, people who mathematical fields of interest, expertise, etc., who are also musicians, can paint. We have people in here who are splendid examples of physical prowess, who could hold their own with any of the intelligentsia from anywhere in the world. Not matching knowledge of some field, but as far as being able to operate the yellow circuits, would blow them out of the water. Now all of you should know all this. I'm not going to start trying to pick out people. You're surrounded by it here. We got people that can turn a buck in here and just make money without, as far as I'm aware, well, people can turn a buck in here without doing severe damage to the moral fabric of society. that can do that, and then walk away from it, and again, operate yellow circuit-wise in a way that matches anything on this planet. And we've got them that can do that, and they're also painters, writers. Those first three categories that, and you do know by now, that is, I said extraordinary, and I mean it. You do not go out into the world of, let's say, intelligentsia. You do not go into the mathematics department and find people that can play piano. Oh, now, I know you can find some. But if you got any ear for music, you know that all they're doing is playing piano. They're not playing music. I've heard Bill Buckley play the piano. He played all the right notes. You should know that you're not going to find ordinarily, let's say painters, sculptors, that show any physical, athletic ability. It's just simply the way life is. All of these kind of combinations are not the norm. We then have in here, and I will admit, I don't guess it's any secret by now, how much I enjoy personally, which we're not here to talk about me tonight, but I've got to point this out and admit it, how much I enjoy music, art, that I fool around with a lot of it myself, so I'm not speaking theoretically. I understand. I've got a feel for all of this, or I wouldn't understand it. How much I enjoy all that. But we have people here and in other cities, September 1988, that fall into, generally speaking, the worker class. We've got people sitting here right now, and people listening to this tape and other places, that have the ability. If I were to say, all right, which category do you fit in, you would say, with no regret, no self-abuse, you'd say, well, all right, based upon those descriptions, I got to fit in the worker class. I like to listen to some music. I got no talent. It doesn't even mean that much. And, art, I know that you like some of this. I can look at paintings and some of it's colorful. I don't know. So there seem to be people in here. And some of you have been here with me as long as anybody. That as far as the first three categories, you apparently have got no particular talent. That is, you're not driven. You're not one-sided part of the intelligentsia, although you can operate in such a way, as I said, you could hold your own with anybody, which is not the point, but I want you to understand what I'm trying to point towards, and that you apparently got no talents in the arts. Can't sing, can't dance, can't play music, can't whistle, and you apparently also have got no particular interest in money, whether you could get and make more money or not. You just seem to be content, you take a job, whether it's the same job for years and years or whether you change jobs, you seem content at that level. Those of you, I'm still not taking this into personalities, but we're getting to a crucial point, and I'm going to try and give you a chance to see the obvious. Those of you here and many of you out of town, if I said, even though you know by now there's no secret hierarchy going on here, no induced hierarchy of some kind, if I said, think about just your opinion, who do you think's the 5, 10 closest people to me, for whatever reason? Who is it that you would just guess? And you'd probably be right. If I said name 5 people, or if you want to name 10 people that you think, if there was something secret going on, or who do you think either been here the longest or understands me the most, or just who do you think it is? And you'd be right. The 5 or 10 you'd pick out, you'd be right. Now let me point out, at least the first 5 I just think of offhand. The first 5 are all workers. There's hardly an ounce of talent between all 5 of them. Not like we're talking about. And none of them hold jobs of intelligentsia. And they got college educations. They do not fit into those categories. Now I said 5, let me push it. I can think right quick 10. To be the next 5, and they still fit that. They all work for a living. Not that they couldn't do otherwise. There is a kind of hierarchy here. It's not secret and it's not induced, it simply is. And as I have been doing this in life, and as I continue to have to bring in new people just to keep it going, just to bring in blood, just to bring in new energy, which you've got to do the same way as a business, same way you'd have to do with the bird watching society. It's a little bit different, but it's a whole lot the same. As I've had to do that, I have subtly and otherwise, when I'd have people go out and do my bidding, like let's go advertise and let's do this. We've got to have some more people, I'm going to go, or I'm going to close this up, or whatever. And we've made approaches of advertising in college newspapers, and we've made advertisings in certain neighborhoods. And it would seem along the way, in these years, that here I am in the Western world, in the area that's the epitome of education, technology, that the kinds of people now that we should be attracting and that should be attracted to this would at least be people, right, with a strong intellect. My God, look at the kind of verbal, intellectual circles, spirals that I have run everyone in. That you got to have some kind of intellect. You got to be able to read and write, right? And it would apparently help to have some talent. Here we are. Part of our activity is tied up with this theater company, apparently. And art galleries. Me always encouraging it, giving my regards to people, encouraging you to pursue your hobby. So it would think, well, this kind of activity, surely, if not just good, strong, intelligent people, maybe really intellectual people, perhaps really the intelligentsia should be, I mean, just the kind of stuff you've been talking about. It would take somebody with, all right, if not the real intelligentsia, then at least artistically inclined people. We can't have just, tight-ass, middle-class people. Artists, people with some talent, are a little looser, open to new ideas, right? Even business people, the merchant class, because they could take this information and use it to their advantage. If nothing else, they could use it as some justification for what they do if they needed that. Like not just survival of the fittest on the human level, but survival of life itself, which requires that there be a constant split of growth and non-growth, and every time you turn a buck at somebody else's expense, you're helping life grow. You reap some of the side benefits. So it would seem to be all that, right? So that's in 1988. And yet, as much as I downgrade history, memory, even my own little yellow circuits sometimes are drawn back to all these great stories. These Buddhas and Moseses and Jesuses and Muhammaduses, who, by all the stories, whether they be true or not, I know, but just for the sake of you, whether they be true or not, who did they end up with? Who? In every case, the stories don't even hide it, they don't even make anything of it particularly. Well, sometimes they try to after the fact. Who do they end up with? Bricklayers, carpenters, fishermen, camel drivers, wood choppers. That's it. Not a sign of an artist anywhere. No sign of talent. No sign of any extraordinary, out of the way, intellectual ability had been mentioned. Never any rich people. Like I said, after the fact, when I said they made no particular mention of it, after the fact, of course, life makes a lot of mention of it. That is, people apparently, they make all kinds of stuff like, well, it shows that rich people can't get into heaven or to paradise. Or it shows that having a lot of talent won't necessarily please you with the gods. You can look at it this way. That since most people are not rich, most people don't have any particular talent, and most people are not part of the intelligentsia, then of course you piss against the building. You know, we don't need that. But folksies, turn the tape then. But folksies, the time has about come again for me to make a shift in things, and it very likely will turn out to be a severe shift. It's not going to happen between now and Wednesday, and it probably won't happen this week. I'm not going to tell you when. Soon. A severe shift. And it has to do with me doing more with this publicly, one way or the other. And it has to do specifically with this. That the time with you people, and absolutely on any larger level, the time of dealing with this useless complexity, the kind of devious partnership that everybody's wired up with to begin with to some degree, and to the degree that some of you have still got it and will not face up to it. And you still look at all of this as being some sort of spiritual intrigue or some kind of metaphysical fifth column work about you taking my description, my term, revolution, as being something more than it is intended to be, by some of you remaining to be nuts, while some of you believing that you are more complex and that you are deeper than I am, than this is. That day is about worn out. And when I turn the corner with this the next time, this upcoming time, that's not going to fly anymore. Now, you can be talented. You can be part of the intelligentsia normally and not be nuts. You can be straightforward and be just smart as a whip. You can be simple and straightforward and just have so much talent that you want to make the whole Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art gag. You could be just as rich and successful in some field as you wanted to be, and as far as doing this, you could be just as straightforward as you could be. Now, you either can or you can't. And if you can't, I'm afraid the train is about to leave you. I'm afraid you're about to jump the track. I am going to change this in general. Whatever it is I'm going to do publicly, that may happen gradually even before you know it, on a very straightforward level. I have given you people enough information. I have made available enough to stagger several herds of Buddhist bulls and Islamic camels. But those of you, in case some of you didn't catch the reason I went to trouble to point out the 5 or maybe 10 people that you might consider to be, if there was some kind of hierarchy going on, would be my right-hand men and women. Those people, without exception, are just as simple and straightforward. And if you think otherwise, if you're trying to think and guess who they are, and if you think otherwise, that, well, I bet they're not. In fact, I bet they're spies. I bet they report on us and tell him. whoever you would think, let's assume you'd be correct. I said, all right, guess who you think of probably, if I had to, in my dying breath, admit, all right, 5 or 10 of you are, you're my right-hand people. I'll leave the church to you. And I said, guess who they are, and let's assume that you guessed correctly. Yeah, it's them. And I said, all right, do any of those people, do you consider them to be devious and real complex and, well, conflicting motives? And you said, yeah. Then with my dying breath, I'd have to say, I wasted that much time on you? Because you'd be wrong. They are simple and straightforward in a real sense. Those who cannot, those who find, those who cannot find, those who miss those who do not catch thee, those who figure that tonight I finally, everywhere in there. If you can't find some way to become straightforward, then I'm afraid the time is about over for you here. Now, anybody wants to stay here, some of you are almost nested here, and anybody wants to stay here that does not engage, can refrain from engaging in any kind of apparent intrigue and gossipy and pseudo-complexity, then if that's what you want, you got a home around me until we all die. So I'm not going to just throw you out. But that's just several people I'm specifically thinking of. But any of the rest of you who fit in my qualifications of nuts, any of you who believe, let's just take it to a simple personal level, which is the easiest to talk about, any of you who believe that you're more complex than I am, and that's a positive attribute. Any of you who think that you understand weird and spooky stuff better than I do. Any of you who believe that you're in touch with weird and spooky stuff, and I'm just in touch maybe with a little bit of it. Any of you who believe that you're here sort of learning something to get your own cult cranked up. Weird and spooky stuff better than I do. Any of you who believe that you're in touch with weird and spooky stuff, and I'm just in touch maybe with a little bit of it. Any of you who believe that you're here sort of learning something to get your own cult cranked up. I guess that about covers it. Any of you who are just nuts. Any of you who believe that I am not as straightforward, that this is not as straightforward as it sounds sometimes. Any of you who do not have this continuing sensation. I mean, it comes and goes, but it's constant to some degree. That even on nights that I apparently get so convoluted that the metaphors begin to turn on themselves and you almost have a headache, and yet it continually strikes you that this thing is right in my face. This thing is as straightforward as it can be, and every time I do see it, it is. It's as straightforward. It's not. I don't fall into swooning states and trances and believe that gods are talking to me. It's like I turn around and go... I just turn around to laugh, and I go, oh my God. That's it. The people that have gotten the most out of this, since I have done it, are the people who do not fall into any of those categories. They're the people that are very straightforward. It's people, in some cases, that never write me a note. This doesn't mean, there's no attack on anybody writing me notes, but some of these people have never, some of the ones that the rest of you would guess, it got to be some of my close allies. Some of these people have never spoken a serious word to me outside this room. Never, in the years I've known them. They come in, and whatever it is that's going on with this, they get it here to whatever degree that I won't do it. Did I seem prepared? That's all right. In this room or somewhere else, that's all right. We're going to meet on such and such night, and I'm going to talk until I get through. And they come in, they sit. I give them things to do, excursions, and as far as I know, they do them. But I say, all right, that's all I've got to say for tonight, and I'll see you next time. And we close up, and I walk out the door. They walk out the door with me, and they have never one time said one word about this. Never. And there's some of those people that's been with this and me the longest. Some of you newer people don't know it, because you don't know when, who came where, but I'm telling you, and they have never one time said anything. They've never asked me a question about this. What do you think of that? In the city they can say, wow, boy, that's got the makings of a cult. No, that wasn't even worth saying. What do you think of that? I'll tell you what you should think about it, is the term straightforward. That those people, a lot of the gymnastics I go through up here is not even necessary for those that get the most out of it. That I could just talk straightforward and just say blah, 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 and they go, ah. And that's it. Does that sound familiar to any of you people's stories, any of the stories that history has drug out? That some guy just shows up and he gets these bunch of people and says, hey, you guys, come over here. You know, lay down your trowels and your shovel and come over here. Let me tell you something. And he tells them, and they go, huh. They don't say, could we discuss this? Or they don't say, does this have anything to do with the lost continent of Atlantis? They don't say, are you hiding anything? Or they don't say, what's the purpose in telling us this? He tells them, and apparently some of them, this group were just common people he gets. He tells them this, and they go, huh. And he says, well, I'm going down this way. And they say, can we go? And he says, yeah. And that's it. They never say, well, what do you mean by that? They never say, where'd you get that? And they never say, did you get that? All right. If they do say anything to themselves, it's like this. That if they ever did once want to say something, then regardless of you people who don't like that Kyroot, it would be almost as though this guy, although history doesn't record it, he turned to him and he said, look, stuff I told you, and I told you that, you know, you could come with me, and one thing, I don't ever want to hear anything about your personal problems. And all of them, although history doesn't record this, all of them went to themselves. They just went, God, what a lesson. See, because your personal problem is not just, well, I believe that spirits are talking to me. I believe I'm being visited by ghosts or by people from another planet. Not just those problems. When you say, I don't want to hear anything about your problem is, what does all this mean? What part are you hiding? What's the catch? Why me? It's no one's fault, not even my fault, but it's as though for some amount of years, X amount of hours, years that I have spent doing this, was a good portion of it is like swimming, attempting to swim in mud, attempting to carry most of you people uphill in an avalanche, which I can do it for me, but attempting to carry you people uphill. And as I said, it's not anything personal with me, but in this position, you're almost an absolute sucker. That if anybody says, hey, tell me more, you know, let me in, I almost have no choice but to open the door or decide to pull up another chair. If that's what you want to try, you're welcome to sit down. And I will leave them be, see what happens. It is almost a physical impossibility at times when I almost know otherwise, believe I know otherwise. If somebody walks in the door and I know they're wasting their time, it's almost impossible for me to say you're wasting your time. It's almost impossible. It's just part of the job that you just can't turn to somebody and say, look, you're nuts, leave. Trust me. They may leave after 5 minutes. I won't even tell you my degree of success in predicting such things because it would only impress you more. But yet, I can't really do it. Just part of the job description just doesn't allow it. But in another sense, if things could have been otherwise, I have wasted a lot of energy. That some of you are still nuts, and some of you don't show any signs of changing. You don't show any signs of even realizing it. You just fall deeper and deeper into it, that life is some great Byzantine intrigue, and that somewhere I'm part of some great conspiracy, or I should be part of some great conspiracy. that life is going to cave in on you, or maybe I'm constructing some kind of real or metaphorical ark to save you. This thing is just right in your face. I've become more and more straightforward, even though I know at times the conversation and the maps and the sketches that I do seem to become a little spooky. And normally I'll holler something, make some crude joke, I'll stop it or do something. I know that. And there's been a purpose. But it is about to run its course. And I'm going to start dealing with whatever I do more on a straightforward basis. And those of you that can operate on that basis, I can assure you that there's a way to turn a corner that many of you don't imagine. But you're going to have to confront, you're going to have to hear that I was talking to some of you real directly. I just didn't call you by name, here and outside on tape. That you are still standing in a cesspool. You think it's you. You think a lot of it is connected with this. You think you know what this is. You think you know who I am. You think that there is some connection between me and somebody else, and I just won't admit it, or I'm hiding it. You believe that there is indeed a real Byzantine, Lucretia Borgia-based conspiracy behind all this. That this is some kind of facade, or this is just the opening volley. It's just about as straightforward as it can be. Tonight it's being real straightforward, which of course to those, here's another test. If any of you that you got strong voice in you right now saying, yeah, in fact you're making it sound so simple and direct tonight, a kind of ultimate misdirection. Yeah. You figured that I was a lot smarter than slyer and more clever than I let on. And so this is proof. The rest of these rubes may buy that, but I know better. I'm telling you with no exception whatsoever, and I understand it. In a sense, I don't like it, which is irrelevant. I kept trying to push open the envelope further of who it would absorb. But those that have gained, those that I always felt, and I can only tell you I know I'm not alone in this, life has been operating in this way, which just shows that life, down on a little, especially minor strains and streams, doesn't know exactly what it's doing either, if that makes you feel any better. But those that have really gotten anything resembling what I knew, what I understood, etc., those that have gained from this are just about as shallow, simple, unconditional, uncluttered, and as I said, there's not a damn one of them is part of the intelligentsia. They're not artists. They're not merchants. They all work for a living. And they're all just as straightforward. And them I can talk to. I can do it here. Sometimes they'll carry the whole night. And I'm just talking to them. Most of the rest of you, you stop somewhere way down the line thinking how this might be related to life after death. Didn't you read something similar to this in some obscure Sufi magazine one time? And I can do it to them personally. That I can just tell them something. It's not that they always hear it all, but I can just tell them something, and they do not wrestle with it. They don't take it as a word of God. But I can talk to them just straightforward and just say blah, blah, blah. And sometimes they'll say, I don't know. I can ask them yes or no about something, and they'll say yes or no. Or they'll say, I don't know. But they do not stop in some imaginary splinter about, all right, what's the significance of this? And I know of no way to beat, browbeat, trick, bribe the rest of you into doing this. But some of you are going to have to make a decision. Some of you are going to have to face up to whether you actually belong in this. And if you can't, it'll work out. Because once I start turning around this next corner, you're just going to find yourself gone. You'll lose interest, all sorts of things. But I'm trying to now give you some indication those of you who are uselessly complex and devious. And something else I've never done is to tell a bunch of you, and there's a bunch of you sitting here, and some in New York and LA and Miami and elsewhere, but there are a handful of you here that you've been around here now for a while, and as far as you know, you and I have never had a particular personal conversation. And some of you have tried to send me indications that you sure would like to get closer to me or hang around with me, and it just didn't seem to work out, did it? And you don't know it, but you have been receiving some of the greater benefit than those that you have imagined were in some way more involved with the actual spirit and running of this, the people that you see apparently doing more of the artistic stuff. Remember, this is an attack on nobody. Any of you that takes in this personally and think I'm talking about you, you made a mistake. But there's some of you that feel as though you've been hanging around the outskirts of the campfire, and you have not. And you should hear me tonight. And I'm telling you one way to tell. It's not true in every case, but one way is most of the ones I'm talking to right now, you work for a living. That you're just doing something like carpentry, plumbing, ditch digging. And you have felt, I know this, that you have felt that there was more going on, or that I talked more to the artists, or I talked more to people running the camera equipment, or I talked more to people that seem to write me long notes. You just imagine all sorts of things. And you're wrong. You are wrong. In fact, you may be one of the handful left when I turn the corner with this and start doing something much more direct. And you feel as though perhaps I don't talk to you. I have never said, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee. And some of you I never have. And some of you should hear me tonight, have heard me very straightforwardly, that you just heard it. Well, that's kept you here. It wasn't a social life. That is between you and I, because I don't invite you out. I never said, hey, let's get together later on. Think about it. And yet I know, in a sense, who has benefited the most. I know who can hear. And the strange thing is, things have not changed that much in the last 4,000 years. It's still bricklayers, carpenters, wood choppers, coal miners, not the intelligentsia, not the artists, not that that is prohibitive, but it's not them. It's spooky, in a sense, because I was just convinced that, hey, give me a break, 4,000 years, things have got to change a little. If not, life wants me to help just turn it a little bit. And I tried, and I'm tired of it, because I can't see that I moved it, oh, I don't know, maybe a cut hair, but that's about it. That's a technical description. I can't see this made any difference, because it is the same people, and it's not their occupation, you understand, but it's the same kind of absolutely straightforward people that I do not have to ever, hardly ever at least, talk to them about their personal problems. There's people that just show up here. And some of them have shown up here, if you don't know it, some of you and your people. Some of the people, in fact, some of the ones that you'd consider the inside crowd, that you'd be right, some of them showed up here by accident. Showed up here that somebody drug them here on a date. They walked in off the street to ask for directions, believe it or not. And they stayed. And they have never asked me a question, never said, who are you, never asked anything. And I talk, and they're part of what keeps us alive. And they just wandered in off the street. Figure that. And again, as people, they all end up not part of the first three categories. They were not that naturally, they were not that one-sided, but they can appear to be. And I'm not doing this for a theoretical impact tonight, because some of you, I'm wanting you to hear me. Personally, I'm talking about you. That you may have thought you'd be well within accepted reason and expectations that some part of you somewhere, even since you've been here, have thought, well, I wish I had more talent. Or so many people in this group have talent. We seem to have an extraordinary amount of artistic talent. We seem to have people in here that have more education than me. I repeat one more time, guess, just what's your impression of the people that you think is the closest to me, or the people that seem to be the closest to this? Think about it a second. Every goddamn one of them work for a living. And hardly any of them got any talent to speak of. If they do, they're keeping it hidden. And yet I can talk, and it's straightforward. That this kind of information just goes, and they don't ask anything else. And it's not faith. It's not a following. It's spooky. It's weird. And they're the ones. They're the heart of it. Always have been. And I have now spent, well, some months involved with trying to kind of push this a little bit. I just thought, that's not the purpose of me telling you this, that I tried something that didn't work, but I find it interesting. But I tried it, and if anybody could do it right now, it'd be me, because I'm as good as there is for this part of the world. And I don't see any great change. It's the same people that was being reported involved with this, and they could walk right up and hear it, just walk in off the street and say, does anybody know where the bus? And they sit down, wait a minute. They say, when are you meeting again? And 20 years later, they're still there. Now, of course, I don't mean just taking up room. They just walked in off the street and went, oh, and that's it. I didn't have to talk about religion, right? If I'd just been dealing with them, I didn't have to say what this is not. I didn't have to compare it with anything. I just said blah, 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 blah. And they went, oh, can I stay? And I said, yeah. And I got through talking. They said, can I come back next time? I said, yeah, okay. And that's it. Never heard a word about their personal problem. Never asked me about mine. Never asked me anything other than what time's the next meeting. That's what this is about. It's straightforward. Now, very shortly I'm going to run this around the corner somewhere. But I'm telling you now, it's going to be related to what I took up most of tonight's tape talking about. And when I start doing something now more publicly, which I guess I either look at as being the first time, the final time, the ultimate time, or next time, whichever one you can deal with the best, trying to judge my age and my general condition of health, you can pick out either one of those. But next time, the approach, those of you that think you've been involved with it before, and in the other cities, what appears to be the approach, what some of you imagine is the kind of people we want, other than those of you who are straightforward, the rest of you are going to be surprised. Because it's going to be so straightforward, as I said, it's going to be right here, and some of you may go, ooh, I don't like that. Which, of course, is make us all sad, but it can't be helped. It's going to be real straightforward. And some of the complexity, some of the secret aspects of this that you people, many of you have imagined, I told you didn't happen and hasn't been going on, is going to start happening. As the outside becomes very straightforward, just direct and to the point. So those of you that can go around this next corner, those of you that can understand what I mean by straightforward, and those of you that can begin to very quickly shake yourself of the insanity. And I believe that I have described in my various definitions tonight, that if you will take it not as an attack, if you tried to listen, and you find that some large part of your system is still being driven by that you do believe that there is some great flaw in me, in what I know, that this is a front for something else, that your opinions, your beliefs, your interest in whatever you think this is about is the definitive statement of it, and that I'm just somewhere in the general neighborhood, or that I'm just some partial help. That's all fine. It doesn't bother me at all, but you are wasting your time, and I'm not going to waste any more of my time unless you can shake yourself from that. And if you can't, you can't. And I'm not going to try to help you. I'm not going to try to make you. This is all the help I'm going to give you is tonight. That I am telling you 4,000 years ago, up until tonight, this is part of a single strain of life's genetic code that I am fully in touch with. I know exactly what it is, and I can say that stories about Moses, whether they exist or not, I know exactly whether they exist or not. I know exactly who he was, if he was. I know everything that went on. Not from reading, I know it personally. And right up until today, no matter what I did, and I'm sure some of them tried the same thing, trust me, it ends up, it's the people who work, not dummies, but it ends up, it is people who are not the intelligentsia, they are not the artists of the world, and they're not the merchants of the world. They're not. They are straightforward people. And it's not any kind of praise. I can't believe any of you even imagine this with me. This is not some kind of imaginary praise for the common man. Because the only thing you say about the common man is he's common. And to do this, you're not common. So it's not some kind of pseudo praise for them. But it's this. It is people who are simply straightforward in a particular manner that they hear this, and there's no great question about it. And it seems like I have spent, what, goddamn years and years, almost in a sense, of defending this. That's not, of course, the way I feel about it. But it's me having to deal with people that walk in and they say, all right, can I stay? And I have not much choice in this job that, yeah, you can. Have a seat. And then having to, out of this crowd of people, deal with the kind of nutsiness of somebody here, somebody there, somebody over there. And so on one night, I try and turn something one way to one person over here, whether I ever look at them or not. And somebody over here, and somebody over here. And I try to get them to see how they're wired up. And I may be apparently talking about politics or economics, and I'm talking to them about some particular way in which they are wired up that is uselessly complex, that they're tied to this binary split of alternatives, and neither alternative is growth conducive. I try. I'm admitting I have limited, at least as far as I'm concerned, success, because to me there is no partial success. I either get you over being nuts and you can hear this, or you can't. I don't take it personally, of course, but I do see now that I didn't invent it, I'll admit, but I have in fact led part of a moot charge, that because some of you I have not weaned from your nuttiness. And worse than that, some of you, I don't see that you can even hear me much when I talk about it. Or if I just do something casual on the surface, like punch you in the ribs and tell you to ease up. And I do more than tell you things verbally. And if you don't feel it, well, that's even worse, because you do feel it or you wouldn't stay here, but then you won't even deal with it. It's straightforward, and those who hear it are straightforward people. And many of you that are the heart of this, you don't even think I pay any attention to you. And you think you've been around here for years, and I have never once asked you out personally to be my coffee drinking buddy. Some of you should be thankful. You just don't know it. And some of you are going to find yourself probably very shortly, just suddenly you're going to be assistant vice presidents to the Pope, to St. Peter. You're going to find yourself suddenly part of the secret inner hierarchy, and you didn't know you were there. Because you thought, well, I'm not part of the real thinking crowd. I don't seem to have that much talent. And yet notice, you just walked in, read a book by me, did something, and you just walked in, and since that day, you're almost done for. And that you never got uselessly entangled with some imaginary relationship with me, some useless imaginary argument with me, or with some area that I've mentioned, some area I didn't mention. That's why I was saying that some of you don't know of it. You should be thankful, because almost everybody's got the potential to fall into that. And so some of you simply didn't fall into it because I didn't make the opportunity that available. Straightforward. Straightforward. You people out of town, I'll try to get you this is useless, isn't it? I'll try to get you a note by the time you get this tape, which will make what I just said, what? Useless? Regarding some changed approaches that you're going to have to start taking in your constant casting about for some fresh bodies in the other cities for me to continue furnishing these tapes. The rest of you here, consider it was a fun night. Because I got close to telling you the truth. And some of you, if you could hear it, you should be greatly relieved. You should be better, if you knew how to compare it, than these low-end offshoots, these very mechanical offshoots that come out as being basic fundamentalist type religions all over the world, of people saying, be relieved of your guilt and your sins because the big guy saves, Jesus saves, Allah saves. And the people that seem to swoon and fall on the floor and holler, yes, yes, Lord, I believe it, I feel much better. If some of you had the ability to hear straightforward tonight, some of you should at least feel the stirrings of such an emotion. That you have been so devious, so complex, so on guard since you've been here. Like, what's going on I don't know about? When's the other shoe going to drop? Is everybody talking about me? Worse yet, is nobody here talking about me? Does he even know I exist? Does he know my name? Sometimes he passes me and it's like, have I seen you here before? Folksies. Will I ever take enough notes here that I'll ever understand this? I can do a little bit better in a certain way, which is what I'm going to start doing, that I'm warning you about. And simultaneously, I'm going to finally, or first time, ultimately, remember, take your choice, start doing something with this really publicly. And I don't mean these little things like paradigm and dragging in 10 or 12 people. I'm talking about throw this out into the public. But if I do, as I said, it's going to be real straightforward. It's going to appear just to be right in your face. Hello there, don't blink or you'll miss it. And who you're going to be surrounded by, someone will warn you, you're going to be surrounded by working people. If there's going to be anybody part of the real intelligentsia, even any aspect of it, and people with talent, it's going to be you people there. Because the rest of it, well, there'll be people that come in that can play a guitar and clap on the offbeat. Might be some people that work crossword puzzles and New York Times and Penn and that kind of thing. But you're going to see the truth that I wasted 4,000 years of trying to push things a little further. What you're going to see is people will walk in the door and go, oh, and they'll sit down and that's it. They'll never believe there's some kind of conspiracy going on. I'll have to talk in a slightly different way, which is going to be a little more straightforward in a sense than I've talked to you people, because they don't want it, they don't need it. And yet you've got to have some group of people that has some more complex knowledge of what this is about. But it doesn't get much larger than it is now. I just keep rechurning people. Throw out some of you just fall by the wayside. Then I have to say, all right, the rest of you people that really take this seriously, which is the working people, I'll tell them, go get some more people. And they do it. But it is always, as far as I'm concerned, it's always a disproportionate number of people still shows up that are nutcases that come in and go, I know what this is. I've been thinking about this. I knew I'd run across it someday. Well, maybe this isn't it, but I bet he knows somebody that's it. Yeah. No. How much more straightforward can I be? There is nobody I know. Everybody I know knows less than I do. Except I know the ones that you think might be, well, they either know something or they know somebody that does. Now, there are people in different parts of life's body. People speak another language. People with their genetic code slightly different. That is, you'd call it people of other cultures that I've got no business being over there, and there's some people over there doing what I'm doing in their culture, but if they came over here and you were still nuts, of course, you might think, well, I'm going to desert you for that guy because he looks a lot more exotic or whatever. But he would have no business being here, and if he knew what he was doing, he wouldn't be here. That's why you never see any gurus from anywhere else here that know what they're doing, because those that know what they're doing know that it won't travel. And that's why I'm stuck here. I keep wanting to move to Rio or somewhere that I like Nicosia, and I can't go there. Well, the job description won't let me go. I got to deal with you people. But you're going to be surrounded by, and I'm going to be operating on that level. Very straightforward. Just what this is. So I hope that cleared up many matters for many of you people. If it didn't, it just shows that you are not straightforward. Because I just said it. I just up and said it. Did you up and hear it? Well, I don't know. It sounds like a metaphorical message for... I'll have to add this to my collection of notes I've been taking. Plus, I'll have to compare it with these other books that I continue to read, and, of course, my spirit guides that help me interpret what you say. And I've been so nice to you people. That's what I get for trying to be nice. I guess Moses could have told me that, couldn't he? Would I listen? You folks out of town better watch this part of the tape, I guess. Think about it and do what you want to with the people, whoever you think can stand to hear it out of you new people. And I will be contacting you shortly about the other matters.